If you're confused by the title, don't worry. I'm going to explain why the world expert in engineering for automotive, Sandy Munro, is completely wrong about Tesla's single casting idea and how he thinks it's the greatest automotive invention ever. I'm going to tell you why it's the worst thing ever for you, the end customer, but also for the environment. So a quick brief description of who Sandy Munro is. Sandy Munro owns a company called Munro and Associates. Munro and Associates are an engineering firm that work on behalf of OEMs, maybe buying that OEM's car or their competitor's car, and then write full engineering reports on that car. Now they do that by taking the car apart, right down to every single nut and bolt, and they write a report on how that's made. Now, Sandy Munro, got really famous in Tesla fandom because he took some Teslas apart and commented about how well constructed they were and how good the motors were. Now, he posted these on YouTube and quickly realized that Tesla fans can make things go very viral if you talk well about them. And because of this, he gained a lot of following, and he's been doing more and more Tesla videos on the back of that. In fact, he's become a little bit of a Tesla fanboy in himself. In fact, he's one of the very few people who's been allowed to interview Elon Musk. Now, unlike Sandy Munro, I am not an engineer. I'm just a car dealer that works within the car trade and reports on YouTube about the electric car industry and the automotive industry. Because of this, I cannot talk from an engineering background. I can just talk from an evidence background of what I've seen happening with single cast designs in the UK market, world market, and what's going to happen even for other manufacturers that also are copying this single cast design now. Now, before we get into what my thoughts are, let's talk about what Sandy Munro has said about a single cast design. So a single cast design is exactly as it sounds. It's a huge casting machine. So rather than making small individual thousands of parts that require lots of welding and lots of basically joins all over the place, a single cast design can make several large casts of a car. So rather than thousands of pieces, we're down to maybe 3 or 4, 5 pieces depending on what car they're building. This single cast design basically improves a lot of things in the automotive industry. It means they can make a lot more cars a lot faster. It also saves on weight, it saves on costs, and it also makes the car more rigid and a little bit more structurally sound. So what does this mean for the rest of the automotive industry as we move towards it, and why do I think that this absolutely brilliant idea from an engineering perspective isn't that great for us? The reason they're not that good for us is at the moment these mega casting machines, giga casting machines. By the way, giga cast machines, that's not a name given it to by Tesla. The company that made the machine called it a giga cast machine, just happened to also fit Tesla's sort of wording of their devices. But the giga cast machine at the moment is a very, very, very expensive machine to buy. It's huge and very costly. Now, long term, manufacturers will have a saving in these devices on what it costs them to make individual cars. But at the moment, they're not passing that saving on to us. Now, what this means for us as a problem is they're saving money, making the car with less pieces. But for insurance companies, this is actually a problem. Premiums for single cast designs here are going up at the moment, and that is to do with how they are repaired and how different they are. Now, to understand how different they are, we need to understand how traditional cars before single casting are made. Now, traditional cars are made using I, C and U sections that are bent, rolled, pressed and put into a very, very many different manner of shapes. Now, this usually consists of hundreds of different sections all welded and put together, which means that your car in all its sections is basically a huge Meccano set. It's huge amounts of pieces all stuck and welded together, individually cast, smaller than the huge massive single cast machines. That single cast machine that's making one section could typically be constructed of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 different little bits of parts all stuck and welded together. So can you see why insurance companies are seeing a problem in this single cast design yet? And that's to do with repair techniques. So if you crash a typical car that's made with normal IC and U sections, let's say you crash the front part of the car, there's a couple of things you can do. You can basically cut out that damaged section and buy a new section of it and weld it back into place. Now, because this was made as several sections, taking that piece out and welding a new section in is pretty much exactly what they do in the factory. It's no different. And if the chassis is a little bit twisted, a little bit bent, you can put them on a jig machine and basically straighten, twist and reshape the car. Now, this is absolutely fine for traditional cars, but with a single casting machine, that's a huge piece. So to take out pretty much half the car to replace that one single casting is extremely expensive. So from an insurance company's perspective, it's much cheaper to write off that car completely rather than try and fix that single casting design. Because the problem with insurance companies is if it's a single cast design, they can't just cut that out and re-weld half the single casting. Because it's an insurance job, they have to follow the manufacturer's recommendations, which would mean replacing that whole single cast part. And that's if they'll even sell maybe half that part or even the full single cast. That is why insurance companies are terrified of single casting cars. Now, I do think Sandy Munro is right. This is one of the best automotive breakthroughs, and we're seeing much more manufacturers use single casting. But until we as consumers start seeing that trickle down into price, or we start seeing repair methods for single cast cars and approved manufacturer programs to repair these for the same cost as traditional cars, I'm not going to advise that people look at single casting as an improvement for them. It's an improvement for manufacturers at the moment. It's not an improvement for you as the end consumer. If more cars are getting written off, that is not good for the environment because it means more cars have to be built. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. And I also think you should check out this video here that I did about Tesla fanboys and how I think they're ruining the network.